I got an email from one student. She's doing Teach America, I think, or Teach USA. She was really excited because she had a bunch of students turn up at her school. They were Hispanic and they couldn't speak English very well, and she had to explain some of the scientific components of what she was doing in the class. And she said it was wonderful, and if it weren't for the course in general, not just the linguistic component, but also the scientific component, she was able to express herself to these students.
You're listening to Speaking of Language, a podcast recorded at the Language Resource Center at Cornell University. I'm Dan Gable, Technology Manager for the LRC. Each week, we explore a topic related to language pedagogy and second language acquisition. This week, on Speaking of Language, Jeremy Thompson, Research Associate and Lecturer in Plant Pathology and Plant-Microbe Biology, shares his experience with Jumpstart and foreign languages across the curriculum courses.
Welcome to a new episode of Speaking of Language. I'm Angelica Kramer, the Director of the Language Resource Center at Cornell University. It is my pleasure to welcome my colleague Jeremy Thompson today. Jeremy is Research Associate and Lecturer in Plant Pathology and Plant Microbiology, and he teaches a course on molecular diagnostic techniques with an associated language component. Welcome to Speaking of Language, Jeremy.
Thank you for having me.
Molecular diagnostic techniques. I have no idea what that means. Can you please enlighten me?
Yeah, in very simple terms, anything, if, for example, you need to find out, you go and you give a blood test, for example, and you want to know different, potentially, if you have an infection or if you're basically worried about a particular issue, you're not feeling well, your blood will go to a lab and they will use techniques there to analyze and detect if you've got an infection, find if there's an infection there, or if you've got an imbalance in your proteins or whatever, they will find that as well. So the overall idea is using high-level, state-of-the-art techniques to analyze what we call biomarkers. So that's basically any molecule that would indicate an imbalance in any organism.
I see.
And usually we're interested in infections, particularly viral infections. And so what we do is we use this class, and we use, in this case, grapevine as a model organism to teach the students about these techniques. And they can then go and apply them to humans or animals or whatever they want.
Does
that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So can you share a little bit more information with our listeners about your background? What do you do as a research associate and lecturer, apart from obviously teaching?
So my research has mainly been involved in molecular biology, so not just diagnostics, but molecular biology. What I'm really interested in are the molecules of life. So that sounds very profound, but basically we're talking DNA, we're talking RNA, and we're talking proteins.
Yeah.
And so whether it's in plants or whether it's in humans or animals, it's really not that important. I consider it fortuitous. I ended up in plants. I think they're wonderful things, and I love working with them. Yeah. But I could be equally working on animals or humans. And what we do is we look at, mainly we look at viruses, and we look at how they operate and how they infect different organisms at a very sort of fundamental level. Now, I've been doing this research for over about 25 years, almost 25 years. And I've really just traveled the world. I love doing research, and I've had no particular desire to sort of settle down in one place. Yeah. Maybe I do now as I'm a little bit older, but back then I just wanted to use my skills and travel the world. So that's what I've done, and I've worked in 6-7 places around the world, lived and worked there. And I've just learned as I've gone, and I've always worked in plants. And mainly in molecular biology. So then I come here to Cornell, this was about 8 years ago, and continue to work in this field, and then figured, I'd like to get into some sort of teaching, but not just your sort of formal teaching where you're sort of up at a blackboard at the front pointing, but something that I enjoy. Yeah. So having traveled, I thought it'd be a wonderful opportunity, and also the fact that I feel that teaching, particularly research, is much better done in the lab than through books or through formal teaching. I'm a big proponent of hands-on, learn by doing sort of approach. So having this opportunity to incorporate this class and get this class up and running, and then include a travel component as well. And then on top of that, of course, the language component was just phenomenal. Yeah. So Cornell giving me that chance has been a great opportunity.
Yeah. So how did this come about that you integrated Spanish language components into this? So this is part of a winter break field trip to the vineyards of Chile, right?
Correct. Yeah. So it's, I suppose, looking back on it, and I've had other people ask, hey, it seems very complicated to do. I've always found Cornell, compared to other places that I've worked at, a great place to work, because really, if you want to get something done, you just identify whoever's doing it, phone them up, send them an email, and everyone is so responsive and so willing to collaborate. It just makes things relatively easy. So this was probably about 2.5 years ago, I just contacted Dick Feldman, your predecessor, and I said, Dick, is there any chance, how could we do this? And he just came over and he said, we can do it this way, that way. Okay. And it was set up in a very sort of simple way. And so thankfully, due to the support of the Language Resource Center and Romance Studies, this has basically been, the language component has been a relatively straightforward thing to incorporate. The thing that I thought would cause more of a problem is students who are more scientifically inclined complaining or saying, why do we have to do the language component? Or even those students who are almost native speakers turning around and saying, why do I have to learn more Spanish when I speak it perfectly? Yeah. So far, that has not been a problem in either instance. So it's been pretty straightforward to set up. I mean, it's complicated in a way, I guess, compared to normal courses. Yeah. But Cornell has been very good at sort of assisting me in that process.
So how does the language training help the students prepare for this trip abroad?
So to give you an idea of what we do when we're down in Chile, we go down there, we're there for just 2 weeks, and we immediately go down to a town just south, it's about 3 hours south of Santiago, called Talca, which is quite a provincial town. It's got a good university down there. We meet with professors and students down there, and then we go out to a vineyard, or basically a wine producer called Conchitoro, which is one of the biggest ones in the world. And we do a tour down there, and we wander around the city. We get to know the city well, and there's all these interactions, even at the beginning, where a language component, at least from my perspective, is handy. And having traveled, I always think it's the first thing you do wherever you go to a new country. Always make a point of at least being able to speak the basics. Yeah. And so getting these students into that, even though their objective is scientific, get them so they can interact with not only academics, but also local people is of importance. After that, we go to Santiago, and we're there for 10 days, and they have a reasonable amount of free time. They have one weekend that's free, and evenings, where they're encouraged to go out, explore museums, enjoy the city. And obviously that will too also involve speaking to locals. And then also we interact with the students at the Catholic University there. And some of the presentations are given in Spanish because some of the students there are not so comfortable speaking Spanish. Sure. So this is I wouldn't say it's a need, but it's definitely helps the students if they can understand a bit of Spanish.
Have you heard anything from the participating students in terms of, benefits, or how has this actually helped them? The fact that they had a FLAC or a Jumpstart course?
Yeah, so I got an email probably about a month ago from one student who is, she's doing, I'm trying to remember what it is. It's Teach America, I think, or Teach USA, which is a 1 or 2 year break where you go to an underprivileged area, and I think she's in Chicago or south of Chicago. She is pre-med, so her desire is to become a doctor at the end of this. And she sent me this email just completely out of the blue saying that she was really excited because she had a bunch of students turn up at her school and they were Hispanic and they couldn't speak English very well, and she had to explain some of the scientific components of what she was doing in the class. And she said it was wonderful, and if it weren't for the course in general, not just the linguistic component, but also the scientific component, she was able to express herself to these students. There was one student when we were down there as well, another student who, on her last day, she said it was the highlight of her whole experience was the fact she sat down with my friend and colleague, Patricio, who's our main contact down there, and a graduate student, and basically had a conversation about science and research in Spanish. And she said it blew her mind, the fact that she could do that. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yep.
That's great. What do the TAs who teach these courses, what do you hear from them? What are some of the benefits that they see in being able to teach this?
I mean, obviously there's an enjoyment in seeing students, learn and benefit. And I think the excitement that they see in the students, because the language component comes before the trip. And basically there's this kind of build up. We also build up the cultural component of the trip as well. So from what I understand it, and I hope this works, is we kind of, gradually build them up so they get more and more excited about the whole trip.
Sure.
And there's an enthusiasm about actually just learning Spanish and being prepared for that trip. So both teachers of the FLAC and the Jumpstart course saw this enthusiasm. And then it was kind of fun, particularly for both, because last year we had Alyssa in Jumpstart, and then we had Danilo, who was teaching the FLAC course. Danilo's Colombian and Alyssa's Spanish, and they had to teach Chilean Spanish. So for them as well, it was very much a process of learning as well.
Sure.
Because Chilean Spanish is one of the most difficult ones out there. So, so it was good fun. I think everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah. Do the TAs get the opportunity to come along with you, or does that not quite fit the schedule?
It does. It does. So, unfortunately, for the Jumpstart course, the teachers are usually language teachers, and so ideally, what we're looking for is someone with more of a biological background who can help me in the lab.
Sure.
So Danilo has been invited both times to come there, but he's a graduate student and his time is limited, so he has been unable in both times.
That's a bummer.
That is, I know, but hopefully next time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you happen to know the students in your class? Do they continue with Spanish afterwards?
For sure. Yep. There's a student who is now, she is going to be a junior. And she has continued in Spanish. She's at one of these, and I don't know the correct term for it, she's gone to one of these houses where they practice, it's like a communal house where they basically practice a language each week.
Yeah.
And she's in the Spanish house.
Okay.
And she's going to Colombia, when is it, in the winter session, to go and teach science to elementary school kids down there in Spanish.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a continuation. Yeah. So
that's wonderful.
Yep. Yeah.
That is fantastic. Do you have any plans to possibly expand what you do? Other courses, or like poke some of your colleagues to also integrate a FLAC or a Jumpstart in their teaching?
Answering the last question first, I think there's a certain hesitancy and nervousness from some of the colleagues, or some of my colleagues in maybe my department and school, because of maybe their background and their, the whole idea of incorporating a language component can seem complicated.
Sure.
Particularly if you're not a speaker yourself. But that is something we're trying to encourage. So I know that in our school, there's a group that also goes down to Nicaragua.
Okay.
And they are going to try and develop a language course there. So ideally in our department, or at least within plant sciences, the objective is to have a plant science-based Spanish course, so that students can sort of plug into that whenever they like. And I think in the long run, what would be really great is if we kind of develop a network of links with different universities in Latin America and even in Spain, for example. We can, just have kind of mini seminars where we just link up through Skype or Zoom, and students just give presentations about what they're doing in the
Sure.
respective languages. So
Sure.
that would be a nice way of developing it.
Yeah.
In terms of my time, I'm principally a researcher.
Okay.
So, my time is somewhat tight with regards
Sure.
to teaching, but I'm all for developing and trying to encourage
Yeah.
students to just go out and not limit themselves by the US, but go out to different countries and experience what there is to see in the world. So,
That's great.
to me, there's an issue now of the whole. They're talking all about cross-curricular activities and trying to get students interested in things outside of their field. And I think it's critical. And I think you get into a situation where if you've got a math teacher that's combining music and architecture, I mean, geez, it's
Right?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, in a way, sort of lacking
Yeah.
here sometimes,
Yeah.
I feel. So
Well, this is why what you do is
right, and
so
to me, it's so to me, it's something that I've done as a career, and so it seems so natural to me. But it's seen as very weird here.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah. So hopefully things will change. I know that there's definitely a desire here at Cornell, and there's also there's other universities in the US that are really pushing for this. And after my trip to Europe, Europeans are doing
So
exactly the same
different.
thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
One course at a time, right?
Yep, exactly.
Making progress.
Yeah.
And you're picking a good time, of course, in the winter to go to Chile.
I know, it's terrible walking down vineyards at 32 degrees.
Yeah. Are the students old enough to also sample the beauty of?
Of course.
Okay.
Well, they don't need it's an 18-year-old.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and as far as Cornell is concerned, that is whatever goes in the country is fine.
Nice. That's
So
good.
we go there. We're able to taste some of the excellent produce, and it's just extremely pleasant. You're just walking through vineyards. You're taking samples.
Yeah.
It's hot.
Yeah.
It doesn't get in the evenings. It cools down quite a bit because we're relatively high altitude, so it's not unpleasant to sleep. So
Yeah.
it's phenomenal.
That's
It's a
exciting.
good experience. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, if you ever need somebody to carry your suitcase, let me know.
You're more than welcome to come over and see. How it operates.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I can probably make a case for that, right? So I assume you are proficient in Spanish yourself?
I am. Yes.
What was your journey with Spanish?
My journey with Spanish was I finished my PhD in the UK. I had a strong desire to leave the UK, principally because of the weather. That's why I've ended up here in Cornell. But the weather is much better here than it is in Britain, trust me. And I applied for a variety of jobs in hot regions in Europe. Portugal, Spain, Italy and Greece.
Okay.
And really it was kind of just a potluck, and I wanted to learn a language anyway. I could speak okay French at the time, and it's kind of got rusty now. And I was given this opportunity. I was offered a job, and I went out there for a year and a half. And then after that, my idea was at least to save up some money from that job and then go traveling. I wanted to backpack somewhere. And my idea originally was to do the Silk Road.
Okay.
But at that time, that would have been sort of in the mid-90s. There were a lot of countries that were problematic to visit. And after a year and a half of being in Spain, I kind of figured, well, I can kind of travel the same distance and just speak Spanish. So I flew to Mexico City, and I just spent, 6-7 months backpacking all the way down to Tierra del Fuego. And then ended back up in Chile, and I spent a year living and doing research in Chile.
Wonderful. That's great.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for the exciting work that you do, and for integrating and supporting languages is very much appreciated.
Thank you.
And thank you also for joining me today on the podcast and talking about this exciting
Great. It's been a
course
pleasure.
that you teach. Next week, I will speak with Patsy Lightbound about form-focused instruction. Dr. Lightbound is Professor Emeritus at Concordia University. She will be on campus as part of our monthly LRC Speaker Series. All our Speaker Series events are live streamed, so please check out our website at lrc.cornell.edu for upcoming events. You can join us for Patsy's talk titled Putting Form-Focused Instruction in Its Place on Thursday, October 25th at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, either in person here in Simpson Hall or online via Zoom. And of course, you can listen to next week's episode online. Until then, auf Wiederhören!
The Language Resource Center is located on the ground floor of Stimson Hall on Cornell's main campus in Ithaca, New York. Check us out on the web at lrc.cornell.edu or look for Cornell LRC on Facebook and Twitter. Speaking of Language is produced by Sam Lupowitz and Dan Gable. Recorded by Sam Lupowitz. Original music by Sam Lupowitz, Dan Gable, and Joe Gibson. Thanks also to the College of Arts and Sciences at Cornell University. As a reminder, the ideas and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of the College of Arts and Sciences or any other official entity of Cornell University. We thank our listeners, and do stay tuned for our next episode.